What happens when a war that was supposed to last only a few days stretches into its 5th year, and the battlefield suddenly expands 1,000 miles beyond its original borders? The rules of engagement are being rewritten in real time, and the shadows of this conflict are now stretching across the borders of NATO, threatening to pull the entire world into a nightmare. Before we dive into this massive shift in the war, take a quick second to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who needs to understand what is really happening on the front lines today. To truly understand the current state of this conflict, we have to look far beyond the muddy trenches of the Eastern Front. We have to look deep inside Russia. Ukraine has launched a spectacular and relentless campaign of long-range strikes that are fundamentally changing the economic and psychological landscape of the war. This is no longer just a battle for territory, it is a battle for survival, and Ukraine is taking the fight directly to the heart of the Russian war machine. Over the past few weeks, Ukrainian forces have successfully hit multiple strategic targets deep inside Russian territory. They have struck oil refineries, massive logistics hubs, and even air bases that house nuclear-capable bombers. Let us break down exactly what is happening with these oil strikes, because the scale is truly staggering. Ukraine is systematically targeting the financial lifeblood of the Kremlin. In early August, a massive oil refinery in Saratov, located about 400 miles inside Russian territory, was struck. This facility alone has the capacity to refine millions of tons of crude oil every year. But Ukraine did not stop there. Just a few days later, they hit an even larger refinery in Yaroslavl, which is about 500 miles inside Russia. And then, in a display of incredible reach and precision, they struck a plant in Ufa. The target is located a staggering 850 miles inside Russian territory. These are not just random acts of destruction. This is a highly calculated, deeply strategic campaign designed to degrade the Kremlin's war chest. Vladimir Putin needs immense amounts of money to fuel this bloodbath, and Ukraine is making sure that the money burns up in flames before it can ever reach the front lines. But the strikes are not just limited to oil. Ukraine has shifted its focus to a completely different kind of target, one that strikes at the daily lives of ordinary Russian citizens and the wealthy elite alike. They have been relentlessly attacking Wildberries logistics plants. If you're not familiar with Wildberries, it is essentially the Russian equivalent of Amazon. It is a massive, multi-billion-dollar corporation that handles online shopping and home deliveries for millions of people. Over the last few weeks, Ukraine has carried out more than 20 strikes on Wildberries sites across Russia. These strikes have happened in Samara, St. Petersburg, Moscow, and even Yekaterinburg, which is 1,000 miles from the closest Ukrainian-held territory. Why is Ukraine targeting an online shopping company? There are 3 very clear reasons. First, the Ukrainian government has stated that these sites are dual use. They are not just delivering clothes and electronics. They are actively supporting the Russian war effort by supplying military equipment and drone components to the front lines. Second, and perhaps more importantly, these strikes bring the harsh reality of the war directly to the doorsteps of ordinary Russians. When a massive Wildberries warehouse goes up in flames, ordinary citizens cannot ignore it. The thick black smoke is a visible reminder that the war is no longer just a distant news story. It is happening in their backyards. Furthermore, it disrupts the convenient modern lifestyle that the Russian middle class has become accustomed to. By limiting their ability to shop online, Ukraine is creating daily frustration. The third reason is that it hits the wealthy and the influential. Wildberries is not just a single company. It is a platform that thousands of small businesses and entrepreneurs use to sell their goods. When these warehouses burn, small business owners lose their livelihoods. This creates a wave of unhappy, influential people. It pushes the Russian oligarchy and the business class one step closer to an economic precipice. Ukraine is brilliantly using these strikes to turn the Russian public and the Russian elite against the very war that is causing them so much pain. While the skies over Russia are filled with the smoke of burning refineries and warehouses, the shadows of Moscow are hiding a much darker, more personal war. Over the last few weeks, there have been 2 highly sophisticated attempted assassinations targeting high-profile Russian military and industrial figures. These attacks send a chilling message to the Russian elite. Nowhere is safe. The first incident happened on a warm evening in Moscow. A bomb exploded outside a very expensive upscale restaurant called Balti Rossi. Inside, the commander of the Russian aerospace forces was celebrating his birthday. The contrast is almost sickening. While the Russian elite dine in luxury, celebrating their military ranks, a bomb shatters the peace. Russian officials reported that 5 people were killed and more than 20 were injured. The top general in the room survived, but another high-ranking general was killed. The son-in-law of the surviving general was also named among the dead, and the police reported that the bomb was carried into the restaurant by an unidentified woman. While Ukraine has not officially claimed responsibility, the precision and the target fit a very clear pattern. This attack was designed to sow terror among the Russian command structure. It shows that Ukrainian intelligence can reach into the most heavily guarded, luxurious parts of Moscow and strike with deadly accuracy. Just a few days later, another car bomb attack targeted the boss of a major Russian drone manufacturing plant. This company produces the deadly FPV drones that are causing so much havoc on the front lines. The target survived the blast, but his bodyguard and driver were killed. The images from the scene showed a destroyed luxury car and blood on the pavement. These assassinations are not just about removing specific individuals. They are about creating a climate of intense paranoia. The Russian generals and oligarchs now have to look over their shoulders every single day. They know that the war they are managing is coming for them personally. If you are finding this deep dive into the shifting dynamics of the war valuable, make sure you are subscribed. And drop a comment below telling me which part of this conflict you think is the most unpredictable. While Ukraine is taking the fight deep into Russia, the Russian response has been nothing short of devastating. Moscow has unleashed a massive barrage of missiles and drones across Ukraine. In a single week, Russia fired over 1,000 missiles and drones at Ukrainian targets. But the sheer number is not the most terrifying part. The real terror lies in the types of weapons being used. Russia is heavily utilizing ballistic and hypersonic missiles. These are the weapons that Ukraine finds almost impossible to intercept. Ballistic missiles are fundamentally different from the cruise missiles and drones we have seen in the past. They travel at incredible speeds, plunging down from the upper atmosphere. Because they are so fast, they give air defense systems only seconds to react. To stop them, you need the most advanced, highly expensive air defense systems in the world, specifically the Patriot missile batteries. And this is where Ukraine faces a critical, life-threatening shortage. President Zelensky has made it very clear that Ukraine does not have enough Patriot interceptors. When a massive wave of ballistic missiles is fired at a city like Kiev or Dnipro, the sky is left virtually naked. The human cost of this shortage is heartbreaking. In a single overnight strike, dozens of people were killed and injured. Entire apartment blocks have been reduced to rubble. President Zelensky confirmed that in some of these recent blitzes, not a single ballistic missile was shot down. They just fell, and they destroyed whatever was beneath them. Russia is also changing its tactics. Instead of spreading their attacks evenly across the entire country, they are now focusing massive waves of missiles and drones on specific regions. The goal is to completely overwhelm the local air defenses. They want to create a scenario where the defenders simply run out of interceptors, leaving the city completely exposed. Throughout the month of July, Russia fired nearly 200 ballistic missiles at Ukraine. Ukraine was only able to shoot down a tiny fraction of them. Now, this is a terrifying reality. It is why President Zelensky has stated that the number one challenge for Ukraine right now is dealing with these ballistic missiles. He has also signaled a major shift in tactics. Ukraine is now making it their primary goal to destroy Russia's ballistic missile launching capability. When Ukraine shifts its focus to a new target, they do so with remarkable speed and deadly effect. Russia needs to take this warning very seriously. While the skies are filled with deadly missiles, the ground war continues its slow, brutal grind. Russian forces are pushing forward, capturing small pieces of territory at a massive cost in human life. In July alone, Russian troops captured a significant amount of land, slowly pushing westward through the Donetsk region. Towns that were once safe logistics hubs for Ukraine are now in peril, constantly hammered by drone attacks and artillery. The fighting is close, dirty, and relentless. We have seen extraordinary footage from the front lines that highlights the terrifying precision of modern warfare. In one video, a Ukrainian drone hovers over a bunker, finds a small chimney pipe providing air to the underground structure, and drops a single grenade perfectly down the pipe. This is the new reality of combat. It is no longer just about massive tank battles. It is about tiny, buzzing machines finding the smallest weakness in the enemy's defense and exploiting it with lethal precision. But amidst the tactical brilliance and the strategic strikes, there is a darkness in this war that is hard to comprehend. We must talk about the horrific war crimes that continue to shock the world. In the southern city of Kherson, a video was released that shows the absolute moral decay of the invading forces. The footage shows an FPV drone hunting a civilian. This was not a soldier. This was a 52-year-old unarmed man, a civilian fruit and vegetable seller. The video shows the man clasping his hands in prayer, begging the machine for mercy. He runs around his vehicle trying to escape. The drone follows him, tracking his every move in real time. It sidesteps with him, chasing him like a predator hunting prey. Finally, as he stands behind his van, the drone dive bombs and explodes. Miraculously, the man survived the blast. But the psychological horror of this event is profound. The drone was piloted by a human being sitting miles away, looking at a screen. The pilot could clearly see that this was an unarmed civilian. They could see him praying. They could see him begging. And instead of calling off the strike, the pilot chose to hunt him for sport. This is what experts call a human safari. It is a brazen, unapologetic war crime. It shows that for some elements of the Russian military, the rules of engagement have completely dissolved. They are not just fighting an enemy army. They are terrorizing the very people they claim to be liberating. It is a stark reminder of the brutality that defines this conflict, and it reinforces the absolute necessity of holding the perpetrators accountable. We are now past the halfway mark of this deep dive. If this analysis is giving you a clearer picture of the war, please share this video with your friends and subscribe so you never miss an update on this rapidly changing global crisis. The terror of this war is no longer confined to the borders of Ukraine or the deep interiors of Russia. The shadows are stretching into Europe, and the warning signs are flashing red. In a shocking development, security at the Leipzig-Halle airport in Germany discovered an explosive-laden drone right next to the runway. At the same time, a DHL cargo plane reported a mid-air collision, believed to be with another drone. German officials have described this as a complex, sophisticated hybrid attack. They have not officially named Russia as the culprit, but Moscow is the prime suspect. This attack fits a growing pattern of behavior. Russia has been targeting logistics and cargo infrastructure across Poland, Germany, and the United Kingdom. This is a massive escalation. It takes the threat to a completely new level. The area where the drone was found at the Leipzig airport is used by Ukrainian cargo planes. By targeting this specific infrastructure, Russia is trying to choke off the lifeline of military and logistical aid flowing into Ukraine. But in doing so, they are bringing the war directly to the soil of a NATO member state. This is not an isolated incident. It is part of a broader campaign of Russian provocation. United States intelligence has recently warned that the prospect of a small Russian incursion into NATO territory is becoming more likely in the coming years. The daily provocations are relentless. Russian aircraft are constantly buzzing NATO airspace. Submarines are lurking near undersea cables, trying to map and potentially cut the vital communication lines that connect the West. Cyberattacks are happening by the tens of thousands every single year, mostly originating from Russian-speaking hackers. The UK Defense Secretary recently stated that Russia provokes Western nations every single day, and the public only sees the tip of the iceberg. The war in Ukraine has fundamentally altered the security landscape of Europe. The line between peace and war has been blurred. Europe is no longer just a supporter of Ukraine. It is an active participant in a shadow war with Russia. The tension is palpable, and the risk of a miscalculation is higher than it has been since the Cold War. This brings us to the complex and often frustrating world of geopolitics and military alliances. The biggest challenge for Ukraine right now is the severe shortage of Patriot missile interceptors. President Zelensky has appealed to his allies for more batteries. He specifically asked the United States for permission to manufacture Patriot missiles under license. However, the political winds in Washington have shifted. The American administration has backed away from this promise. When pressed on the issue, the response was that America needs its own missiles, and it is true that the U.S. needs to replenish its own stocks. The American military has burned through a massive amount of its missile inventory due to recent conflicts and deployments in the Middle East to defend U.S. interests and allies. Because the U.S. supply is constrained, Ukraine has to look elsewhere. There are 15 other nations around the world that use Patriot missile defenses. This includes countries like Germany, Japan, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Some of these nations are likely feeling the pressure on their own stocks, but others might be willing to send more to Ukraine. The UK and other European allies are actively working behind the scenes, getting on the phone and trying to persuade these nations to hand over their interceptors. It is a massive diplomatic scramble to keep the Ukrainian sky safe. Adding to the complexity of the air defense crisis is the involvement of North Korea. Ukraine has claimed that North Korean missile forces are deploying to western Russia, bringing with them dozens of ballistic missiles and launchers. Given how difficult it already is for Ukraine to shoot down Russian ballistic missiles, the addition of North Korean missiles is a serious concern. It means more targets, more speed, and more destruction raining down on Ukrainian cities. The war is becoming increasingly international, drawing in actors from all over the globe to fuel the fire. I arrived in Kyiv on a Wednesday morning after a massive overnight strike left 17 dead and at least 44 injured. President Zelensky stated clearly that none of the ballistic missiles fired in that blitz were shot down. Then, on Thursday into Friday, another wave killed 9 and injured at least 89, with heavy focus on Dnipro in central Ukraine. Reports suggest Russia is now concentrating fire on individual regions, sending 120 to 180 missiles and drones at one area at a time to overwhelm local air defenses. The numbers are brutal. Throughout July, Russia fired 195 ballistic missiles. Ukraine shot down only 29. That is roughly 15%. This is why Zelensky has called ballistic missiles the #1 challenge. It is also why he has changed strategy. He says destroying Russia's ballistic missile launching capability will now become Ukraine's top target. But Ukraine cannot do that alone. It needs Patriot interceptors. the most advanced air defense missiles capable of hitting ballistic threats. Zelensky has appealed directly to allies. President Donald Trump had promised to let Ukraine manufacture Patriot missiles under license, but he has backed away, wobbled, and even said America needs missiles because he burned through American stocks in the war against Iran. The Patriot systems used in the Gulf have depleted reserves, so where else can Ukraine turn? There are 15 nations besides the United States that operate Patriots: Germany, Greece, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Kuwait, the Netherlands, Poland, Qatar, Romania, Saudi Arabia, Spain, Sweden, Taiwan, and the United Arab Emirates. Some are low on stocks, others might help. The UK's new Defence Secretary, West Streeting, made clear that where Britain lacks ground-based ballistic defence, he will call allies to ask. The Ukraine Contact Group is actively working to persuade countries to hand over batteries. Germany, the Netherlands, and Romania have already supplied around 6 Patriot batteries to Ukraine, financed by a wider group of allies who replenish their stocks. This is the quiet diplomacy that may matter more than any single drone strike. Still, the missiles keep coming, and Ukraine has been left naked against the hardest weapons. Now we must talk about what is happening far from the battlefield, because the risk is spreading. In Germany, security at Leipzig Halle Airport discovered an explosive-laden drone near the runway. A DHL cargo plane also reported a mid-air collision believed to involve another drone. German officials have called this a complex, sophisticated hybrid attack. They have not publicly named Russia, but Moscow is the prime suspect. The area near the drone is used by Ukrainian Antonov aircraft, symbols of Ukrainian engineering and manufacturing might. This is not isolated. There is a clear pattern of Russian attempts to target logistics, cargo infrastructure in Poland, Germany, and the United Kingdom throughout 2024. The threat is now inside NATO's own airfields, and American intelligence, reported in the Wall Street Journal, predicts that Russian provocations are more likely, with a small incursion into NATO territory now seen as more probable in the coming years. When I was in Ukraine with UK Defense Secretary West Streeting, he said Russia provokes Britain every single day. Aircraft buzz NATO airspace. Submarines lurk near undersea cables. Frigates open fire in channels. Spy ships drift quietly. The UK Ministry of Defense battles about 90,000 cyber attacks annually, many from Russian-speaking hackers, including the largest plane in the world, which was destroyed early in the invasion near Kiev. Amidst all this destruction, there's a fascinating and deeply important psychological question being debated. An anonymous opinion piece published in a Russian media outlet argued that Ukraine will not be able to bomb Russia into turning against Putin. The argument is that when a country is being bombed, the attacks often galvanize the civilian population. Instead of turning against their leader, the people rally around the flag. They unite in the face of an external threat. This is a very real risk. Ukraine's campaign against the oil refineries, the Wildberries warehouses, and the fuel infrastructure could potentially lead to a surge in Russian patriotism. It could give Vladimir Putin the exact propaganda tool he needs to convince his people that the West is trying to destroy them. However, history shows us that this is not always the case. We can look at counterexamples, like Germany in the First World War. The Allied blockade did not unite the German people behind the Kaiser. Instead, it collapsed morale, caused widespread starvation, and made it impossible for the government to continue the war. The psychological impact of bombing is complex and unpredictable. Ukraine is taking a massive gamble. They are betting that the pain of the strikes will eventually break the Russian public's tolerance for the war. They are betting that the affluent middle class, the small business owners, and the oligarchs will eventually demand an end to the conflict when their own wealth and comfort are threatened. Only time will tell if this strategy will break the Russian will to fight, or if it will only make them fight harder. As we look at the grand picture of this conflict, it is clear that we are in a completely new phase of the war. The battlefield is no longer defined by a simple front line. It stretches from the muddy trenches of Donetsk to the oil refineries of Siberia, from the upscale restaurants of Moscow to the cargo runways of Germany. Every single day, the stakes get higher. Every single action has a reaction that ripples across the globe. Ukraine is fighting not just for its own survival, but for the future of the international rules-based order. They are showing the world that, even against a much larger, heavily armed aggressor, innovation, precision, and sheer will can change the course of history. But the cost is unimaginably high. The skies over Ukrainian cities are still falling. The families of the assassinated generals and the killed civilians are still mourning. The shadow war in Europe is still growing. The world is watching, waiting, and wondering what will happen next. The weapons are getting more precise. The strikes are getting deeper, and the tension is reaching a boiling point. The only thing that is certain is that this war is far from over. The next move could change everything. The shadows are lengthening, and the world must be ready for whatever comes out of the dark. Before you go, let me ask you one thing. When a drone can chase a civilian across a parking lot and a general can be killed at his birthday dinner, Have we not already entered a new age of war? Think about that. Then tell me what you think in the comments. I read every reply. Keep paying attention. This is not over, and neither are we.